shit. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Sideline Summit. I'm Antonio Perez, joined as always by Danny Cole, DC, UPenn's finest, Chris Coacher, CB Coacher Boy, and we also have a very special guest today, head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies and also one of UPenn's finest, head coach Taylor Jenkins. Taylor, thank you so much for coming on today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. It's a pleasure to be here on Sideline Summit with you guys. Antonio, Chris, great to meet you guys. Danny, pleasure reconnecting with you as well. Glad that the Penn Roots brought us together and excited to talk some hoops today.
And speaking of the Penn Roots, Danny, officially an alumni along with Coach Jenkins, two of the finest UPenn alumni that we have to offer. But yeah, basically all we're really doing here today is, me, Danny, and Chris, we got questions for Coach Jenkins, and he's just going to give us the insight of an NBA vet. I mean, even at the age of just 39, one of the most decorated coaching resumes that you'll find in the NBA. I believe Danny has the first question. So, Danny, if you want to get it underway.
Yeah, I can get kicked off. So I know a little bit probably more about your past and history than them. I probably filled a little here and there. But I wanted to know, as an NBA coach, what is the hardest thing to do during the 82-game regular season, particularly in leading a group of 15-plus players?
Yeah, I've gotten asked that question many times, and I think it changes year to year, may even change day to day sometimes. But I'd probably say the hardest thing is like really staying connected with everyone. I think as the NBAs continue to evolve, rosters are growing, staffs are growing. The nature of an 82-game schedule, it truly is a grind. I mean, every team has different expectations, different ways of operating throughout 82 games. But, we have to look at this through the lens of we've got a lot of individuals, players and staff that, in my position, trying to lead throughout this journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, as everyone would say. But everyone's going to view the season a little bit differently, coming in, expectations of themselves, expectations for the team. Everyone's role is obviously different on the team, and there's inherent highs and lows that come with that. There may be a pocket of the group, whether it's players or staff, having a great stretch during the season. That could be at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. It could be in the off season, whatever it might be. There are those peaks and valleys, and just trying to stay really connected with everyone. Because as we all know, it doesn't matter if you're in basketball or in just life, there's never enough time in the day. As they say, there's never enough time to do everything that you should be doing, can be doing, want to be doing. So that's been a big part of my journey, starting off in the G League, way back when it was called the D League, as an assistant coach and a head coach, and then made the jump to the NBA as an assistant coach, 5 years in Atlanta, 1 year in Milwaukee. I learned a lot. But being able to have that opportunity when you're in that head coach seat to have successive years, year 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, 5, and now I'm going into year 6. I'm constantly evolving as a coach, as a leader, as a motivator. But as I mentioned, probably the hardest thing is just connecting the dots with everyone. There's philosophical things you have to connect everyone. How are we all pulling in the same stream, in the same direction? But how are we also learning each other? We're constantly evolving ourselves as individuals and as members of the team. So that's probably the biggest thing. And, I spent a lot of time this year really trying to prioritize that, not just within, the players and teams, the players on the team and the staff on the team, but also all the other departments. That's the front office, that's the medical team, that's our performance team, it's our nutrition team, mental health team, logistics team. The list goes on and on and on, but I try not to make it formal. It's got to be informal and organic because we know we've got 82 games on the schedule, but every day is going to look a little bit different outside of that. So connecting the dots is probably the hardest thing, and still trying to refine that. But building relationships, as I say, is the thing that I get the most out of this, outside of going out and competing and winning games. It's sharing this life experience with people.
Yeah, that's amazing. Great to hear that. Like, it's more than just like a teamwork environment. It's really just a close knit group of people. And I believe I can swing it over to Tony for the next question.
Yeah, I would say so. As I mentioned earlier, you guys, you're two UPenn guys. I just graduated from Temple recently myself, so we're all Big Five Philadelphia basketball, fans. I was just gonna ask, do you have any thoughts on like inner city rivalries, like the Big Five, City Six, where it's not necessarily a conference thing, but it's just like, we don't like this, like, not to say you don't like this team, but we have this rivalry because we're in the same city. It's just, do you have any thoughts on the Big Five rivalry, or any thoughts on like how the hype of these rivalries have died down, at least in the last 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously at Penn from like the fall of 2003 to the spring of 2007, and obviously things have clearly changed in the last almost 20 years. With power conferences and these super conferences. Obviously, going to Penn, as an Ivy League school, they've always operated independently. But there's a uniqueness to it, like you said. I don't think you can really point to a lot of other big cities in the country that have that many teams. Especially at the Division I level, that are competitive, but also try to put each other on their schedule every single year. Obviously, basketball, being around that and the Palestra. I didn't go to many games, when I was at school, but obviously I knew when they were being played and all the hype that was surrounded around them. There's just something intrinsic about just your city repping out and having those teams compete against each other. There's obviously conference rivalries. There's interstate rivalries. I grew up in Texas, so all the Texas teams, anytime they played each other, but I can't really pinpoint, not even the New Yorks of the world or maybe the LAs of the world outside like the top teams to have 5 or 6 teams try to play each other annually. It's sad to see that the rivalries have, kind of died down where, the budgets have changed and colleges are going to different conferences and have different agendas. But there's nothing like hoops in the city of brotherly love, and having those teams play against each other. I mean, it's a lost art that hopefully they can bring it back and it gets a little bit more pub, moving forward.
Yeah, and before I move to Chris, I don't want to be too political here, but does Nova count as a Philly school?
Hey, y'all are there closer than I am. I mean, they're playing at Wells Fargo, Wachovia, I think, when I was there. So I would like to say that they're maybe included. Was at the City 6. There's probably maybe a radius that you have to factor in mileage wise, but I mean, that's just more great competition for the teams that are in the urban Philly, parameters.
Yeah, there's been a lot of conversation in the NBA, I guess, fan base community with the Knicks versus the Sixers. Because then Villanova posted a big montage of Brunson and DiVincenzo and Hart making threes. And they're like, are you part of Philly? Or are you part of New York?
I mean, they're just supporting some alumni, so it got pretty nasty for that series. But we can move on. We can go to Chris for the next question here.
Yep. So I my first question was going to be about G League stuff, but you already answered a good portion of it because I'm the old guy here. I just turned 30, so I'll be 31 soon. So I remember the G League time. Yes, it's a wonderful club, Danny and Tony. I promise when y'all get there, it's wonderful. But yeah, I remember like the D League and just like how it changed over from the G League and just how important and how much more the NBA kind of put into just development of players. So I think my question is really like just being a product of that. Like, what do you see like just positive experience you still use today in coaching, but like also like in your regular life too, like some things you took from that you can kind of apply to not just coaching, but like your everyday?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be here as a head coach in the NBA without that experience. If anyone looks up my resume, I didn't play in college. I didn't coach in college. I wasn't even a manager on a team. And as you're trying to get into an entry level in the NBA, especially on the basketball ops side, a lot of times those resumes are filled with people that had some kind of collegiate basketball experience in whatever role it may have been. So very fortunate. I mean, I learned so much. Even talking with my mom about it, she basically said that was kind of like your graduate degree in coaching. I didn't go to school for sports management. As I said, I didn't have the working experience outside of the classroom. So I have very fond memories. I think probably the biggest thing, people that have lived in the D League, now the G League, that can have a laugh about it, but it's kind of like a badge of honor, is the adaptability at that level. Your roster is always changing with call-ups or two-way now with two-ways and assignment players. You're not, flying on charter planes and staying in these great hotels. So there's kind of a humble upbringing there where at the core, it's just true development. So I really valued that and appreciated that, because now even being at the NBA level, I know at the core, all that matters is let's get in the gym, let's get some film, let's pour in the work, let's develop a player development plan, let's develop a scout, let's just focus on basketball, even at the NBA level with all the other bells and whistles that come with the NBA. The D League afforded that, the way we were traveling, it's the planes, it's the buses, it's the hotels, it's going to a gym and all they had were volleyballs. So we had to figure out how to run basketball practice with volleyballs and just getting creative. So always adapting. I think that creates a mentality and a mindset, to kind of further up your question. It's like not just in my profession in the basketball world, but even in life. I mean, we all know it doesn't matter what your career pathway is, what stage of career you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, things are going to get thrown at you that were unexpected. So I think that really created a lot of strength of mind for me, is knowing that, yeah, I can control as much as I can control, with my work product and my work ethic and my commitment to getting better as a basketball coach. But all the obstacles and challenges ahead, I can't always predict that. I say this all the time. Back then, you knew there was 50 games on the schedule, and you were probably going to play all 50. In the NBA, there's 82 for sure. You're going to play all 82. Outside of that, you don't know what's going to come every single day. And that's the collective approach. You don't know if you're going to have an issue with a plane, an issue with a gym, something going on with someone you're working with, a player or colleague, maybe going something in their personal life. And then I go outside the lines, and being a husband and a father, you don't know what's going to go on with, my wife, my kids, something going on in their lives. We're all kind of traveling this journey together on parallel tracks, and, they're going to intersect plenty of times. But I think the D League and the G League really kind of gave me that perspective, thinking big picture. What are my controllable variables and what weren't my controllables? And hopefully I'm still, I'm doing well, but I'm definitely still learning on the fly, even at this level.
Well, thanks for that. The big reason why I want to ask that, I have a couple friends who played in there, and they have that same sentiment, like almost kind of adopt a different spirit and like a different. I think one of my friends compared it to like being at the JUCO level, like working your way up and kind of going through, and it just shine through your answer as well, like just kind of having adopting that, like whatever comes, just got to adapt it and kind of go with it. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I think, the other piece of that is it's easy to say we got to adapt, but I think it's kind of putting your thinking cap on. It's like truly getting creative. Like I said, that vivid memory of going into a gym. I think it was in one of the Dakotas. I think it was maybe Sioux Falls, or it was in Bismarck, North Dakota. We went from the hotel, we popped over to the gym. We were finally going to get a road practice because our schedule was crazy. And we walked in, and the balls were all locked up. And they said, "Oh, we just had volleyball practice in this, rec center. This is all we got." And we had fun with it because we still wanted to pour in the work. We were going to work on something. We were going to, make something positive out of maybe a perceived challenging situation. I mean, that's the furthest from a challenging situation, but that sticks with me because it forced our hand to be super creative. I mean, your roster turnover, you lose your top couple of scorers on your team, your starters, and it's not because of injury, it's because they got a promotion or recall to another team, and you got to elevate someone else. So what did you do for that other guy's development plan to make sure he was prepared, getting creative in your conversations and what you're doing on the court? Those are the things that really jump off the page to me. I mean, I've learned so much in my career at all levels that have maybe, a better coach, but that adaptability and the need to be creative, and being open-minded and not stubborn as well, because you can't just predict everything in a game, just like in life. So your day-to-day shouldn't be predictable as well. And I've had to work on that. I grew up being pretty stubborn and routine-oriented. I still am. But we've got to adapt on the fly in the game. We've got to adapt on the fly in life.
Yeah. And I'm going to take the next question. It's a little on the spot, but I'm really wondering, how do you feel about the kind of NBA player culture of, I feel like a lot of players are going to team for 1 or 2 years, and if it's not working, they're requesting out or trying to go find a new team to compete immediately. Most recently, you've seen like James Harden. He's been to like 4 teams in like 4 years. I feel like it's really conflicting. Like, do you want to stay and build a championship team, or do you want to kind of just chase a different team with different players each year?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we have to do is we have to accept our reality. I mean, obviously with CBA, salary caps, obviously I think player empowerment is phenomenal. I mean, they're the drivers of our league. I mean, they're the reason people come to watch. And I understand my role as a coach. I'm here to serve. I'm here to teach and educate and hold this thing together and steer everyone in the right direction and learn from them as well. I mean, because I'm not here as a head coach in the NBA with not having learned so much from players. It's not just the coaches I learned from. I learned so much from the players. But I think it's one of the most important things you got to do in a leadership role in the NBA is you got to understand who you're bringing in the organization. I talk about it all the time. It's the people. So we know in life, everyone's got different agendas. Everyone's got different motivations. Basketball is going to bring, 450 plus, players together. That total continues to grow as rosters are growing. But what is the true intrinsic driving force behind the reason they're in the NBA? So that's all the homework, our front offices do. That's all the relationship building that we then, pour into our guys when they're in this program. But it's definitely an interesting landscape, with the amount of money that's in the NBA. Only one team can win at the end of the day. So sometimes it is to go chase, an NBA championship. Guys are at different stages, fresh into the league versus on the, the second half of their career. So, then they listen to a lot of people too, what should be influencing their decisions. But, I'm never going to fault someone. I learned that early on, when I was actually in the D League. We had a couple players get opportunities to go overseas. And being a part of the NBA Development League, your goal is to have players make it to the NBA. So when they took opportunities overseas, at first I was like, what are we doing? I mean, like, this can't happen. But then as I talked to those guys, as they were literally packing up their apartments and leaving, they said, Coach, man, as much as I want to get to the NBA and I appreciate everything, like, I got to do what's best for me and my family. Like, there's an opportunity that I can't pass up. So I'm in my early 20s, starting my career thinking about that. And then even when I got to the NBA and, I was in Atlanta and we had a couple players make free agency decisions to leave, as much as like, man, we're so close. We're that close to a championship. We need you. We need you. We're trying to do as much as we can to want to recruit people and retain people. But then at the end of the day, if someone says I got a better opportunity for me and my family, career, if that's financially, that's living closer to home, that's chasing a championship, who am I to stop them? I've got to do everything in my power to try to recruit them, show them that this is a great place for them to be, take care of them on the court, front office, financially, all that stuff. We do the best we can. That goes back to those controllables. So understand the landscape and saying I did everything possible. And then even though change was made, we lost maybe a player. Let's find another great player. Let's empower another player, throughout that process that they're ready to take on the new opportunity. So there's a lot that goes involved besides just luck and good health to winning an NBA championship. Those are definitely two truths. But it's been a great learning process in not just my NBA career, but also my development league career.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that last point. Of course, it's going to take a big amount of talent to win an NBA championship. And because they're just, like you said, like there are things that influence player on social media. And like a lot of fans are like, well, this thing doesn't count because so-and-so was hurt. And this doesn't count because whatever other thing. But I was like, you can find that for almost any championship, like luck and talent are going to be a piece of it. And you also touched upon that athletes in general, they see some of the headlines. Some let it get to them, some don't. Did you have any thoughts on like what the players call the new media, where it's like, well, LeBron and JJ got a podcast where they talk about the X's and O's, and Paul George has a podcast with his guys. Do you think that maybe them setting the narrative could be a good thing, or could that be like leveling expectations in a way? Do you just have any thoughts on the player media?
Yeah, I think it's great. I learned a lot. I've actually watched a couple of those podcasts, and everyone's they're gonna love it, they're gonna hate it. Everyone's gonna have an opinion. People are probably gonna be watching this podcast going, Coach Jenkins doesn't know anything, or he knows a lot, or I don't pay any mind to that. I take every opportunity to watch those podcasts to learn and grow. And I think it's great that our players are now finding these other mediums and sources to get their knowledge out there, their beliefs and their feelings. Well, while that's still happening, while I'm still here in Memphis in FedEx Forum and with our guys and with our staff, I need to be pouring into those relationships to hear what's on their mind too, to provide those opportunities for their takes on the X's and O's, the culture, the business of basketball, whatever it is. I think that's definitely the world and the society that we live in, is that, people are more able to share what's on their mind and what's in their heart. So the fact that it's public and, people may look at it as maybe it's a self-driven, thing, it's for their brand or all not. I take it as it's knowledge sharing. Take from it what you want. That's the way that, I kind of, bottle it up. But then also I want to be able to afford our guys not to have to always think about they got to get behind a camera or a microphone to talk to me and share what's really on their mind, how they view things, because the more that I'm learning from them, and I hope that they're learning from me, then we're going to be able to come to whatever decisions we got to have as a team to get to where we want to go. So it's great, though. I think over the last couple of years, I think just the player empowerment outside of just the business model These guys, they're the ones that play the game. They're the ones that draw the attention to our sport. They're the ones that are the thinkers of the game as well, just as much as we are. I've got to be humble and understand that I'm not the one lacing up the shoes out there competing for 48 minutes. I may be in practice, getting up there, moving my feet, mixing it up with the guys every now and then, just like our staff is. But to really hear from the guys that are really the players in the game. You want to hear from the actors, when it comes to, movies. You want to hear from the author that wrote the book. You want to hear from the experts. And we always say the smartest people in our building are our players. We got to be open-minded to hear from them. And it's great that I work with guys that want to hear from me and our staff as well. And it's that just collaborative relationship that I'm very fortunate to be a part of.
Yeah, it's good. I think everyone here is big fans of the Player Podcast, more some than the others, but we can go right on over to Chris for the next question.
Yeah, I think you kind of segue right into my next question, just because I think the part about the players kind of being the smartest on the subject, it kind of talks to there's been a lot of talk about NFL and NBA, like the cross sport, like who can an NBA player play NFL better? Can an NFL player play NBA better? And with you being around world-class athletes from G League to coaching John Morant, probably the highest jumping guard I've ever seen in my life. What is your opinion on that? Do you think NBA is easier to cross over to, or NFL easier to cross over to? I know it's a sillier question, but I had to get a professional's thoughts about it, because we have our thoughts, but I got to see what you think too.
Yeah, not trying to offend anyone. Obviously, I'm biased to the world-class athletes that, are NBA basketball players. But in terms of just, as much as I know about the NFL, I'm not an expert. I played football in 7th grade, and that was it. So everyone can knock my answer here for the lack of experience and knowledge. But I think from a skill player standpoint, NBA players playing in the NFL, I think is doable. I mean, obviously there's a center of gravity, there's a physical makeup of, the NFL player. There's a mentality that goes involved too. I mean, where we are stark different, types of sports. But I think from a skill standpoint, elite wide receivers, they're some of the best movers in all of sport. Yes, they have routes to run, but there's a creative element behind reading defenses. Are they, in a 2-drop coverage? Are they in man? Are they in press coverage? Whatever it might be, how they create those advantages until they catch the pass. Tight ends too. I mean, the tight ends have changed over the last couple of years. So seeing, Gronk, I think Gronk played basketball, right? Maybe
Julius Peppers too as well. I know he played defensive end, but Julius Peppers,
Antonio Gates. I think maybe Tony Gonzalez did. I mean, a number of players. That was kind of like that hybrid. Let's evolve the tight end position from being just a blocker, but actually running some routes. But I'm looking at some of the top wide receivers in the game. Yeah, there's a pass catching ability. There's a vertical threat, but just how skill players move. Getting some of the best running backs in the game that can get out into the flat and you can drop it off, and it's the yards after catch. I feel like some of our athletes can make that transition. There's definitely got to be a mind for it, the physical, strength components they got to have from a durability standpoint. But the way that the skill players in the NFL move, I would think our athletes can probably translate and make that move if they wanted to, right? I mean, not many players are doing that these days. I think everyone kind of finds their one pathway. But I even think about some of the big guys. I mean, in our league, we don't have the 300-pound, 6'8" guys that are just these stone walls that have the most agile feet, whether it's defensive or offensive linemen. So I thought about that one, over time. But I think those wide receivers and those skilled backs, I think we've got a few of them maybe living in the NBA. They just happen to have, some other gifts, with the basketball in their hands.
Who do you think would be the most exciting player to make the transition if they were to do it?
I mean, all the hype would be LeBron for sure.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Whether he's a wide receiver, he's one of those transcendent, tight ends with his athletic ability. But I mean, there's also, you got to have a high basketball IQ to play any of these sports. And I think he has displayed the ability to play 5 positions in the NBA with physicality, with speed, with intelligence, with touch and feel. I think there's a place on the NFL, gridiron, for someone of his caliber, his size, his makeup, but also just his ability to read the floor before something develops. I mean, you look at the best quarterbacks. Sometimes, to connect the dots with a tight end or wide receiver, you need those guys to be able to think like a quarterback too, how to read and react. And I think he would be the one everyone would want to see, pay some money to watch an NBA player play in the NFL.
Yeah, I think
maybe I'm a little partial. But as a Sixers fan, I would love to see Tyrese Maxey in the NFL.
Would
The
you
way
like to
he
see him
can
on the offensive side or the defensive side?
offense, I think he'd be a crazy wide receiver running back combo. He's just like a
I think he'd
fast
love
start
corner.
stop.
I'm not gonna lie. I think
Mm.
he'd love corner.
Yeah, and the
How
reason I asked too
no.
was because I think what Coach Jenkins said was the mind. Because I mean, football and basketball players in the NBA, NFL, they're both world class athletes. But I think it's just the mind that gets it. Because I can say, football made me quit in 8th grade. I got hit one time. I was like, "Yo, I'm going to go to another sport." So I know it's a lot about the mind. 'Cause these dudes are athletes. Everybody's able to jump higher, able to see like some guys that 6'5", 220 translates. It just you have to have the mind at some point. But yeah, I agree. Thank you.
I say, don't worry, Chris. Me and Danny are the opposite. We watched our teammate get dunked on in 8th grade and decided to hang up the sneakers. So it goes both ways. Like it really does.
Yeah, Coach Jenkins.
Okay,
I don't know
cool.
if you know our what's it called? Derek Jones Jr. actually went to our middle school.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah,
Our coach has some stories about Derek Jones like really giving him the business one-on-one. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't blame him. Like his knees are probably a little bit more healthier back in middle school, so I don't know how high he was jumping.
Wow.
At that
apparently
point.
there's a myth that he dunked on our coach from the free throw line in middle school.
That has to be a fact.
I can believe it. Yeah, I can believe it.
Our Coach Robotham was what, Dave? Like a solid 6'4", maybe.
Yeah, he's a bigger dude. He's a bigger dude.
Yeah, he's a taller guy. So I
can
still wouldn't put it
picture
past him though. I still wouldn't put
Picture
it
that
past
right
him.
now. Middle school gym, seeing Derek Jones Jr. taking off from the free throw line. I mean, the dude's a slam dunk champion, I think, right?
Yeah.
Supremely gifted. I mean, how many ATOs when he was with Miami? You knew there was some back pick for a lob, and we're like, guys, it's coming. And they still found a way and slip out of a middle pick and roll. And to see how he's transformed his game defensively too. I bet he was locking people up and still posterizing them, back in the day too. So
yeah, for sure.
It'd be a nightmare matchup,
Literally.
especially as a middle schooler. But I guess it's my turn for a question. So before, this is kind of getting into a little more like career aspect questions, because before you became head coach of the Spurs D-League affiliate, you did intern with them. How do you think that helped you transition? Because like coming straight out of college, you're going to be a head coach. You're going to be like a leader of men. Like some of these guys will be rookies, but other of these guys are going to be D-League vets. How do you believe that internship prepped you to fill that head coaching spot?
Yeah, I mean, it's always about the opportunity. I was afforded an unbelievable opportunity coming right out of college. I mean, at the time, the San Antonio Spurs were, I mean, the pinnacle in the NBA, from coaching players, front office, ownership. To have a connection that got me into the door there. I do not take that for granted. Again, I would not be here as a head coach in the NBA if I had not gotten that opportunity. I would like to think my work ethic and my love of the game, passion to teach and stuff would have gotten me there. But we are all aware in this business that someone needs to open up the door for you to get in. But I think being in that position, as you talked about, now my role is being a leader of men and women, throughout our organization. It's not just our 18 players. I got to see firsthand what leadership, needed to look like at the NBA level. I mean, it was so foreign to me, right? I mean, I could be a fan of the NBA, season ticket holder for Mavs games growing up in Dallas. Watch a clinic online, watch an interview, read a blog, but being in the room with Pop, RC Buford, getting some interactions with, at the time, Peter Holt, who was the majority owner, being around Tim Duncan, right? Those guys exuded winning at the highest level and how to go about it. Everyone had their different roles, serving in a GM capacity and the head coaching capacity as the, linchpin on the court as the best player. But then also seeing, the growth of Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, those guys, along with, Tim Duncan, was special. So I took a seat in mentality. One was the opportunity, but how was I going to embrace the opportunity? It was basically being a sponge. I truly was going to go in with a mentality. So if anyone's watching this, starting off or wanting to get into an entry-level position at any level, but, especially the NBA, is going with a learning mentality. Try to soak up as much information as possible, try to develop your identity. And when I say that, like I always talk about finding your coaching voice. So in all those interactions I had, whether it was in a front office meeting, taking notes, cutting up film and delivering it to a draft, meeting, or a free agency, preparation meeting, or a project-based meeting, whatever they were, trying to figure out salary cap wise, injury studies, or it was sitting in a room with Pop and hearing about game plan or the vision of the team and the roster construction and how they were going to, build their system around this player and, Timmy, this stage of his career versus, Tony, who was still young, about to get into his prime, or even just watching a workout and listening to conversations and 5-on-5 play or a small-sided, drill that, Tim was leading, just seeing everyone's, types of leadership styles, but also their knowledge of the game. I got to learn the lens of NBA basketball through all three of those individuals because I had access. And that's why I say the opportunity was presented to me to be in the back room, cutting up film, writing up notes, running vans back and forth, to run errands and all that stuff. But then I got to be able to be in meetings with the front office, with the joint front office and coaching side. I got to spend time with the assistant coaches because they were willing to impart knowledge on me and help in my development pathway. And then to be around the practices and the games, to watch the player interactions, how a practice structure. So I got to see everything from unbelievable people, and just the mentality of going and saying, I'm here to learn and grow because I don't know anything. It doesn't matter if I had coached in college, I had played in college, I'm at the NBA, I'm at the highest level. And as I said, I'm at the best team at the time in the NBA. I'm going to take a back seat. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to keep my mind open. I'm going to learn as much as possible. And all through that, I'm going to get a feel for the game of basketball. How would I teach it? How would I interact with people? And then to your point earlier, how would I lead? And I got to learn from three of the best leaders in all of, NBA history, in my opinion, with, Pop, RC, and Tim. So hopefully I've taken a lot of good things from that, and all the other great coaches I've worked with. Obviously, Coach Bud, one of my greatest mentors, had an opportunity and showed faith in me to join him in Atlanta and Milwaukee. So all those opportunities, from San Antonio, Atlanta, and Milwaukee, going in with that learner mentality, having an opportunity that you can't take for granted, and always focus on how am I just going to use these everyday experiences as a way to get better as a coach, as a leader, as an educator of basketball, has gotten me to this point. And not losing sight of that, even though I'm now in the leadership position, now I have to flip it. And while I'm teaching and leading, I've got to show others what that looks like to pay it forward, to leave the game in a better place, because I owe that. I didn't get this opportunity off a whim. Someone opened a door for me. I took advantage of it, made the most of it. Now I want others on my staff to feel that same way, that they're getting better in their coaching careers, but also for our players in their own careers as well. The beginning is just the beginning, and the end is far off if you continue to pour into your work.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. I would say that even goes, I would say, for players and coaches. Just the ability to just sit back and learn. It does wonders. One would say that's like a Spurs culture type of thing. But we can go on over to Chris, as he's got the next question.
Yeah, and Coach Jenkins, so one thing that you mentioned is that you grew up in Dallas. I live in Dallas now. I moved here from Chicago about 7 years ago. And one thing I say all the time to people is what grew my love for basketball is growing up around good hoops, like being able to just, like I was able to go see Derrick Rose in high school. Like that influence was able to change my opinion on what basketball was and made me kind of love it. So my question for you is, did growing up in Dallas and like you having season tickets, you're able to see Dirk, you're able to see like really good basketball, and then moving to where you did your college work and everything, being around good hoops there, did that have any influence on you? Like as a kid, like did you say, hey, this is what made me want to pursue coaching or pursue anything in the NBA or pursue did that have an influence on you being able to see good hoops every day?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a piece to my growing passion for the game of basketball. I mean, I had a whole lot of influencers. My love of basketball started with Michael Jordan. I mean, I grew up in the heyday of the 90s. I was born in 1984. So Dream Team, Chicago Bulls, NBA on NBC. I got the NBA Jam at my house. So when that song comes on, I see my 9-year-old son playing it. I'm like, he has no idea. He's talking about Jordan. He's wearing his jersey. I got to watch him against the Utah Jazz. I got to see him in all those epic Eastern Conference battles, and then the NBA Finals as well, numerous times, of course. So that was where my love started. I actually grew up playing baseball. I mean, that was kind of the first sport that I gravitated to. Was probably better at baseball than I was in basketball. I was that glue guy, hard worker, go get the loose ball, pick up 94 feet, get all the rebounds, do all the, the hustle plays when I played basketball. But that was my love. I mean, I didn't care about, any accolades or points or anything. I just wanted to win. So there was the energy of the sport that I really shifted from baseball to basketball. And I would say it was a lot of just like the teams I was on, just, from, middle school teams to high school teams. I didn't play in college. So that was the last run of me playing the sport. I'm like, I want to do something in basketball. I want to coach in basketball in some capacity one day. At the time, I'm thinking when I'm in my 60s, 70s, I'm retired, I've got grandkids running around. What am I going to do? I'm going to go coach a high school team one day. But being in Dallas during the days of Dirk, Steve Nash, Michael Finley. I mean, I even was at Reunion Arena when it was, the Triple J's, Jason Kidd was playing there, Sean Bradley, watching those guys. So my love of basketball was growing. I'm like, wow, this is the hometown team. I'll have fun. But when Steve Nash got there, when Dirk got there, Donnie Nelson took over, and just seeing how the offense was operating, Avery Johnson takes over. They go to the finals. Of course, I mean, your home team's repping, the NBA finals. How can you not, kind of fall in love with a little bit more and find more interest and passion? But again, it was Michael Jordan. It was playing the game. It was watching it when I was in high school. And then when I got my opportunity in college to decide, am I going to go, playing route, academic route? I went academic route at Penn, but we started a basketball league there, for inner city kids, 9 to 13 years old, boys and girls. So that love was always there, that teaching, wanting to be around the game. Doesn't matter if I was playing it, watching Jordan, I was coaching inner city kids. I was in Dallas, I was in Philly. It didn't matter. I just wanted to be around hoops. So I've had a lot of influencers, and then obviously, cracking in, like I said, starting with the Spurs. That couldn't have been even more motivating to say, I'm with the best team around the best front office, best coaches, best players. I better make something of this. I better take something from this graduate degree that I'm getting. And then when I finally got my first opportunity to go from actually the front office side to the coaching side, I tried to never look back and just say, how am I going to continue to learn and grow and make sure that love that I displayed back in the 1990s with Michael Jordan, I was going to continue to carry that out even now, about to turn into my 40s.
Well, nice. And that speaks a lot, because like I said, being able to see good hoops, and you spoke of Michael Finley. Like I said, I lived in the inner city of Chicago, so I've seen Derrick Rose, I've seen Michael Finley, Corey Maggette, anybody you can name I've seen. And that's just like, I want to do something in this round ball sport. It makes me want to do that. But I have a follow-up for you. That for one thing you mentioned, when you played, you were a grit glue guy, like kind of trying to keep the team together, a guy that every team needs. Would you say, like, as a coach, that's the kind of guy, not necessarily that you gravitate to, but you can kind of, I guess, coincide with or relate to a little more, because that's kind of how you played, and not necessarily what you would look for in a team, but like that's a guy like, hey, you can spot a glue guy that would be helpful like pretty easy, because that's kind of what you were as a player.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can probably speak the language a little bit, easier amongst each other. So that's one thing that every team needs to have. I mean, everyone's going to play a different role. But everyone's going to kind of carry a different personality on the team. Who's going to be the leader of the team. I was the captain of the team, one of the captains of the team, but I was that hustle glue guy to allow everyone else to play to their strengths. So I definitely try to identify, with those guys. I hope our team identifies that too. It doesn't matter if, you're a point guard, you're a center, you're a starter, you're coming off the bench, how many years you've been in the league, what's your ultimate skill set. Do you have, and being in Memphis, the best place to embody grit and grind? I want my whole team to embody that. And that's not just our players, that's our staff, that we're the hungriest, most competitive, most together group out there. We're willing to sacrifice anything to make all those hustle plays, along with playing beautiful, high efficient, high scoring basketball. But that's why I've been very proud of our guys, the chips on their shoulder that they have. We identify those types of guys that are willing to, get into the grime that it takes to win at the highest level. Because pretty basketball is not going to win out at the end of the day. You got to have some toughness. You got to go through some stuff. I could be cussing right now if you want, to actually win at the highest level. So everyone's going to embody that a little bit differently, but having a couple of guys in your roster, at least one, I mean, you can look at all these teams and identify, even though that person wasn't the star player, that person had the biggest impact on that roster. I'm looking at some of the teams right now in the Final Four conference finals. I mean, everyone's talking about TJ McConnell. I mean, that guy embodies grit, being that glue guy. Everyone's talking about Derek White, right? Glue guy, everything he's doing. Everyone's talking about Jaden McDaniels. Look at what he's doing. And then your guy that you just talked about, Derek Jones, what he's been doing to lock guys up. So guys that embody that, I think, I can look at the head coaches and they probably all identify we got to have someone like that I can speak to, and hopefully they can get the rest of their teammates to embody that as well.
Yeah. I'm going to move on to the next question. So when I look at the Grizzlies roster, it's a lot better than the record was last year. And that's really indicative. If you look at the last 2 years, you guys were the 2 seed the year prior. And I guess you had a lot of unfortunate injuries this year and player development. And now you have a top 10 pick. What are your thoughts and what are your opinions moving forward and then looking into this next season? As I think you guys are a lot better. You're a team that shouldn't have a top 10 pick that has one, which can go a long way.
Yeah, it's last season can be interpreted a lot of different ways. It was definitely unfortunate. It was not what we were expecting. It was historic numbers of injuries and starting lineups and just number of guys on the roster. I think we set all these NBA, records, but our guys never lost sight of the big picture. Our spirit was phenomenal throughout. Obviously, sure. I think I said at the beginning, I mean, guys are going to have their ups and downs, throughout it, individually, collectively. It was my responsibility to make sure that we understood, what each day presented to us, but also big picture, what we were striving for. Despite, not making the playoffs, as that's what you're playing for. You're playing for championships. You're playing to play in the highest level of basketball at the end of the season, play those meaningful games. But we found meaning in other ways. The growth and leadership of our group, guys navigating really tough times and how to overcome that, despite the outcomes not being there. I mean, that's a true testament to growth in our young group. And then obviously you can point to certain guys individually that grew a lot. I thought Jaren Jackson took a substantial leap in his game, offensively, defensively as well. But we asked a lot of him on the offensive side to do more things that he hadn't been doing previously, but all things I know he's capable of. Desmond Bane, despite getting hurt, midway through the season, I think, he's destined to be another one of our all-stars on top of John, Jaren. Eventually, he's so willing to get uncomfortable in his game. I mean, to exude that, show that to your teammates. I saw other guys, embracing that in their work. And then, a couple of our young guys, that were, one guy, both of them late in the second round, both two ways. One guy that thought he was going to be with the hustle most of the year in G.G. Jackson, and then Vince Williams in only a second season. The opportunities that those guys got, they're making the most of it. And one of my messages coming out of this season is we have to make this last season matter. We have to look at all the things that we went through, the adversity, how that's going to make us stronger, mentally, physically, more willing to sacrifice even more, knowing that we want to avoid those situations moving forward. But also the successes. What can we build on? What are the things that we can carry over, knowing that we have had success, but granted only in the regular season in the previous years. So understanding what we can take from there and let that continue to build on the things that are fueling us after, a disappointing year. But let's not think negatively of it. Let's think about the positives, even from the adverse moments. And knowing that our guys are putting in the work right now, and we're only just a month removed from the season when there's still a long runway for an off season, is really exciting. And as you said, we have a top 10 pick, something that you didn't expect coming into the season. But that's another opportunity in a lot of different directions. You can use the pick, you can trade up, trade back, keep it, you can trade out of it. There's so much optionality. And when you're afforded that opportunity on top of the other internal growth that we displayed. And I grew a lot too as a head coach. I think all of us were forced to even get more uncomfortable facing the adversity that, that we went through this past season. Let's bottle all that up, saying we've got these opportunities ahead of us with the development. We got this off season, but also this great, draft pick that we can use a lot of different directions to continue to add and enhance our roster, because our group has shown we're a competitive team that can play really good basketball and winning basketball. But we know we've got a lot more work to do. And that's from our players. I'm asking them to do that. I'm asking our coaches to do that. Our front office, they've got their responsibilities as well. Our medical team, everyone's wired the same way. This can be a pivotal summer to make everything from this last season matter. And we've got to make this summer matter. And just like every day's got to matter. But that's what's staring us in the face right now.
Hey, Coach, just real quick, did you have to get out of here at 45, or could we take this to the top of the hour?
I think we can go for another 5 or so minutes. I have another engagement I need to, but happy to talk a little longer.
Okay, we can. Yeah, I'll say we'll just wrap it around. I'll have one more question, and then we'll we'll go to Chris. I'll say, yeah, you talked about those historic injury numbers, which it's truly unfortunate. It's a very loaded roster, very talented team. But you mentioned earlier how it's like an 82 game season, it could be different every day. And it also goes apart where your team looks different every day. Do you kind of when you look at this Grizzlies team, like Danny said, we're so talented and you have this top 10 pick. I kind of just want to get your thoughts on this Western Conference as a whole, because it's entirely loaded. And then you have you guys who, if everyone, not say everyone's healthy because an entirely healthy season is like impossible, but if you guys are like 70% intact, and then you're going to have the next year of Wemby, you're going to have another year of Rockets growth. Like, what do you think this Western Conference is just doing for the sport of basketball, just for how competitive it is going to be for years to come?
Yeah, I think loaded is an understatement. I think it's a mother of all. It's unbelievable where the NBA is right now. The competition is at an all-time high. The parity's at an all-time high. I mean, I'm watching one of the morning shows today, having on the background. They're like, look at all these teams outside of Boston that weren't expected to be there. And you're like, do you know how competitive these teams were all season long? There's no one just of destiny at any given season. I mean, obviously we've had some dynasties, with, the Bulls, when I was growing up, the Bulls, the Lakers, Golden State. Yeah. But it takes a lot to win 82 games or go through 82 games in the regular season and go through 4 playoff series. There are a lot of demands. There's a lot required for sure. But I mean, even seeing, as you talked about, where we can potentially get back to, the Rockets, the growth that they showed, San Antonio, they've got 2 top 10 picks. They've got Wemby, who's a generational talent. And then everyone just talks about this influx of youth. You see what, OKC's doing. You see Minnesota, where they're at, obviously in the conference finals. Dallas, got young Luka. You can go team by team, and it's really easy for people to say, well, here comes a youth movement. Here comes a team that have the caps and this and that. And everyone starts talking about, the teams that have maybe players, that are on the older scale in terms of, the Lakers and the Clippers and Golden State. Those guys are super competitive, and they've been there at the highest level. And knowing those ownerships and front offices, they're going to try to find more ways when guys end up retiring or moving on or whatever the case may be, that there's not going to be a dip. Because I think the West is supremely loaded. I think the league is supremely loaded. I know the West gets a lot of attention, but the East, I mean, they were ravaged with injuries, come playoff time. And there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of young talent coming through. Seeing what Orlando was doing this past season was remarkable. I think Jamal Mosley is doing a phenomenal job. You see Banchero, what he's doing in only his second season. So I could go through almost 30 NBA teams and just talk about the NBA is an unbelievable state. How you're able to have the draft lottery, create opportunities for all teams to have great ability to get top picks, the free agency market, how teams can now, work through the salary cap to design their rosters are going to be a little constrained. So you have to work around the margins and develop as well around the star players. I think I see a lot of the teams really adapting, to the new landscape of the NBA rules, not just the game, but also the business model. So I'm really excited about the prospects. I keep telling our guys, just because we're going to be healthy, that's not going to be the answer. We've got to pour in a lot of work. We have, as you said, we have this opportunity with a top 10 pick as well, but I'm leaning more into what I can control, is how we continue to get these guys motivated internally to grow. Because I think we are building something special. We've had our success. We've had our fair share of adversity and our learning opportunities that hopefully are fueling us to really get better. Now, this is going to be my 6th year going in. And this competitive West and the competitive NBA, it's going to pass you by if you aren't putting in the work. So it's going to be a great offseason. So already off to a great start, and excited to see what comes with, June 26th, 27th and free agency, and then seeing what we got summer league wise to see our young guys continue to grow and develop there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Chris, if you just want to cap it off with one last question, if you got one, that is.
Yeah, it was just going to be like a real fun question, because I know, Coach Jenkins, you're entering your 6th season in coaching, and in that in coaching the NBA, in that 6 years, I know you've been able to see probably even up closer than a lot of people, like the growth of the WNBA as well. So with Caitlin and the influx of talent, the influx of eyes, like just how do you see that just affecting the basketball landscape as a whole? Because I think a lot of people talk about A lot of basketball purists would say they like WNBA more because it's a little more low to the ground. You got to use more fundamentals, so on and so forth. Just like, how do you feel about just how the just effect of the WNBA growing just can have on basketball, especially grassroots as a whole? I
love it. I mean, this is a global sport for boys and girls, and to see the WNBA get so much hype over the last couple of years. I wasn't really close to her, but in San Antonio, kind of crossing paths with Becky Hammond when she played there, and obviously she coached there. And what she's doing with the Aces is phenomenal. I mean, back-to-back champs. And I went and watched one of their games last summer, and just seeing the level of basketball. I mean, it is high-level basketball. I mean, whether you're talking about playing lower to the ground and different athletes, of course. But the skill is at a high level. I mean, just watching the tactics, the game planning, you can see it unfold. Like when you're a coach just sitting in the stands, I don't have to be in a meeting. I don't have to hear what they're saying. I can pick up on the tendencies. And, I think the Aces have set a standard. I mean, there have been so many generations of great WNBA players. I love watching I think there was like a simulcast, and it was Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird, and just hearing them talk shop. I'm like, I learned so much from that, knowing they had unbelievable collegiate careers, but obviously, with the Seattle Storm, and I think, the Phoenix Mercury, Diana's back there, and, they're both champions. To see that right now, how it's not just the WNBA, but obviously what Caitlin's done, but what South Carolina has done, Dawn has done the last couple of years, obviously Gino and UConn, like, I'm well in tune with it because I've followed them for many, many years. But just seeing that now finally it's even more branded. I know that was a huge vision, of David Stern's, the partnership between the NBA and the WNBA, but also now empowering even more beyond just NCAA March Madness for men, just seeing over the last couple of years, just the competitive basketball, leading up to the Final Four. And obviously Caitlin has stirred up a lot of the driving force for the passion of women's basketball. And I hope this just carries even more, that this doesn't become just something that's just like, oh, it's just a generational class, we'll leave it at that. That this is just fueling more growth in women's basketball. That's from what the WNBA is doing, what women's college basketball is doing, all these great WNBA teams, but also the NCAA programs as well. That UConn dominated for so long. Growing up in Texas, seeing what Baylor did as well, but seeing what South Carolina's doing, LSU's doing, Tennessee coming back. I think there's so many great programs. But at the end of the day, it's a global game. That's an unbelievable sport to play, and to know that the next generation is getting exposed to this day in and day out, year round. How it's the NBA season's about to wrap up, WNBA season gets starting. You got March Madness for both men's and women's, rocking it, in March and April. It's fun to watch. It's a fun time. So I'm excited when we're out in Summer League in Vegas. I hope the schedule lines up to go see the Aces play. Whoever their opponent is, but that was a fun time last year, and I look forward to doing more of it.
Awesome. Sure. Thanks. Yeah,
I want to thank Coach Jenkins for joining us. Of course, this means a lot to us. Just talking all sorts of hoops, all sorts of career aspect type of things. Of course, thank you to Danny for having this connect, that UPenn connection, one of the strongest. Do not get that twisted. Of course, thanks to Coach Jenkins' PR team for scheduling this, helping this us line this up. And to the viewers, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on audio platforms, make sure you leave a 5-star review, and download the episode. One last round of applause for Coach Jenkins for hopping on today. We really do appreciate it. Anything to say before we hop on out of here, Coach?
Thank you. I mean, I love talking hoops, guys. I appreciate all the questions, the back and forth, the conversation. I can clearly tell y'all's passion for the game. Thank you for showcasing the game of basketball with all the different guests that you have on your show. And hopefully this was worthwhile for your viewers. I'm fortunate to work in an unbelievable team environment with the most beautiful sport. This is a great time of year watching the NBA playoffs. We're in the conference finals and soon to be in the finals. So hopefully we're continuing to draw more fans into our great sport. The development of the game globally. It's been fun to watch over the last couple of years. So I'm just a participant along this journey, and hopefully I was able to share some insights on my journey and what I see in the league and where the league's going, because it's a great fun time, and happy to have more people on board.
Yeah, certainly were.
We deeply appreciate it.
Yes. Yeah, best of luck on the season, off season, getting kicked underway. Really, really looking forward to see what the Grizzlies can do. I don't know if you know. I'll go out by saying this. I'm a really big Ja and Luka fan. I don't think I've ever told you this, but
All right.
Can confirm. Can confirm.
Can
And
confirm.
also, I do want to say, Tone and Danny, unfortunately, Coach Jenkins did say basketball is the most beautiful sport. So I just want y'all to know that has been said. So basketball,
I
you
do
ain't
agree.
football,
I do agree. Look, I wish I wasn't 5'9". I wish I could go out there with the best athletes in the world. It's not possible.
Hey, you can still hoop. Find a way. Find a basket. Let your mind take you wherever you are. Whether you got 9 other people out there to play 5-on-5 or you're by yourself, you can play the game.
Absolutely.
Fact.
sure.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys.
and-
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you
From
again.
Antonio, Chris, Danny, and Coach Jenkins. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Love you.